St. Louis as a young man, so he came to Minnesota looking for gainful employment, as a lot of men did from the South, not realizing that the North did not have the same type of racism that they had in the South. It was overt racism there, and it was covert here. But they were hiring black men, and they were paying them fairly well for that time. Every 2 weeks, he would have a check for about $55, and I thought that was so much money when I was a little girl.
I was in school in North Carolina, and my friends would always come up during the summertime to work on the railroad. And during that time, I was in the military, so after I got out of the military, I got in school, and one of my friends said, well, we're going back out to Minnesota to work on the railroad. Would you like to come along with me? Oh, sure. That was my first trip out to Minnesota, and I really, really liked it. Most of the black employees at that time, a lot of them was college-educated people, and the only jobs that they could find, I mean, the better paying job was the railroad job. So that's what they wound up doing.
My father was born in St. Louis, Missouri, and my mother was born in Park City, Kentucky, right outside of Louisville. And he used to run on the railroad in the southern route, which took him into Kentucky, where he met my mother. He left the railroad to take a job in a factory in Kentucky so he could be near my mother. He had taken a firefighter's exam and scored number 3. And so it was about a 6 to 9 month wait. He thought he was prepared to become a firefighter in Louisville, Kentucky. Mysteriously, my father was no longer on the list. They said he didn't pass the fireman's test. So being a little frustrated, he knew some people who were running the railroad in the north in St. Paul. And ultimately, they left Louisville and moved up here, and he went to work for the Great Northern Railroad, the empire builder, where he became a waiter. And he lived in what they called the Maids apartment, which was temporary apartments for railroad men that were first moving up here. And it was located on Rondo and Dale. And then my mother moved up a few months later after he saved some money, and then they moved into a duplex over on St. Anthony and Dale. He worked on the railroad for almost 40 years in the dining car, out 6 days and in 6 days. And the 6 days that they were out on the railroad, they were putting in 20-hour days. So basically when he was in town, he was pretty much going to, he was sleeping.
There was a lot of discrimination that occurred with the railroad guys. They had to sleep in freight yards before they fought and won the fact that they needed to be housed in a hotel just like the other white employees were. And they were given the worst hotels in the worst areas. And those hotels were rat infested with bed bugs or roaches that were all around, and then having to work and then deal with the fact that you couldn't even sleep and get a good night's sleep. I said, Dad, why would they do that? He said, because we're black. He said they didn't feel that we deserved anything better. And so when we had the union, we had union reps fighting for us, and it changed over the years, but not until the 70s or 80s were they, sleeping in somewhat decent hotels.
It was quite something to be running up and down on the railroad. Railroading was a stabilizing thing in the community, economically speaking. You could make some money. I don't even remember what the pay was, but you were in a position to get tips. And by the time them brothers got home, in between payday, they had a piece of change.
He would have maybe a night off and then have to get back on the train early in the morning and repeat this whole routine of abuse. Maybe some people would give him a dime for a tip, and I remember him telling me that he pulled out $1 and said, well, here you go, this is your tip for helping me. But you have to watch, you know, what you do, because you're trying to support, you know, a family, and you can't be too reckless in what you say or do. I think most of the men at that time that worked for the road or were in this community were looking for a better way of life, not only for themselves, but laying the foundation for the next generation.